Stepney and the bluebell branch line. Stepney was always happier to be on his branch line. Ever since he was saved from scrap, the fat controller rewarded him for his branch line, and Stepney had sometimes felt busier to do the work on his branch line on his own, but that doesn't bother Stepney. He was always happier pulling his coaches all around the stations, and he was never late, and his passengers were always loyal to him. Until one morning, everything began to change. Stepney was to take a goods train to the end of the line. He was feeling very tired about it. "I'm tired," he groaned. "I don't really want to take this goods train today." "I know you don't," said his driver. "We all said that we all said we'll be there when Neville arrives." He said, "Just look at his coach." And he was right. Neville's coach was waiting at the station for Neville to arrive. "I'm tired," groaned Stepney. Why don't we just send another engine to pull this train?" "I'm sorry, Stepney," said his driver, "but we can't. The quicker we get this done, the more things will be back to normal. Then you can have your rest." "Yes," said Stepney, and he finally agreed. His driver coupled Stepney to the empty trucks, and Stepney pulled out of the station. The trucks were being very cheeky today, as they were hearing how tired Stepney was. "Let's play tricks on him," they all said. But Stepney wasn't worth the trucks trying to play tricks on him because of how tired he was. He went up the hill, and the trucks' last chance had come. "Hurrah, hurrah," they laughed, and they began biffing Stepney too hard, and as Stepney began to go too fast. "What's happening?" he cried. "The trucks are playing tricks on us," said his driver. But poor Stepney began to wobble and wobble. "Look out," said his driver, but it was too late. Stepney came off the rails into a bend, and he lay on his side looking surprised. "Oh dear," said his driver, "we have to call for help," and indeed they had to. Until moments later, help did arrive. Mighty Mac arrived with Rocky to clean up the mess, and now Stepney and his goods train were back on the rails. His driver and fireman looked at him all over to see if he was hurt. "You look fine to me," said his driver, "but your paintwork has been scratched." "Oh dear," cried Stepney. Now I am going to feel like a heap of scrap," he said. "Not for long, you're not," said the fat controller. "You will be taken to the works for a fresh coat of paint." "Thank you, sir," said Stepney. "That will be lovely." And indeed it would. When the rescue crew left, Paxton arrived to take Stepney to the works, and he was off in a flash. Until a few weeks later, after his accident, Stepney came back to Sodor with his fresh coat of paint gleaming in the sun. He was so happy to be back. Just then, he even met both Bill, Murdoch, Arthur, and Billy at the sheds. They were very happy to see him. "Welcome back, Stepney," said Arthur. You really do look amazing in your new coat." "Indeed I am," said Stepney. I was worried they'll paint me into something else, but they still paint me with the right colours," he said. "You look amazing," said Murdoch, "and you don't even look like a heap of scrap anymore," teased Bill. "Hey, don't speak to him like that," snapped Arthur. Just take no notice of Bill, Stepney," said Arthur. "It's all right," laughed Stepney. "That's what I said after my accident," he said. "Really?" said Arthur. "Well, you're not scrap." "I know," said Stepney. He was about to tell the others his weeks at the works when he looked at their down faces. "What's wrong with you all?" he asked. "Out with it." But the others didn't say anything. "Fine," he said. If you You can't tell me, I'll see for myself, and he puffed away. Stepney sure isn't going to like what he sees here, said Arthur. Indeed, said Murdoch, and they were indeed worried of this situation. But when Stepney came to the station, he was shocked. He found that no one was at the station, and he was very sad about it. "Where's my passengers?" he said. "Everything's gone." He was about to know why until he heard an unfamiliar voice. "Out of my way, silly Stepney," said a voice. "All right," said Stepney crossly. "How rude!" As he switched lines and backed forward onto the same line next to the station line. There was Splatter with a truck full of garbage to take to the waste dump. Splatter looked snootily at Stepney. What are you doing here?" said Stepney crossly. "The Fat Controller said I was really useful, and now he wants to replace me for dirty diesels like you." "Oh really?" sniffed Splatter. "Well, you must be Stepney," he said. "I've heard all about you. I don't believe we've met before." Stepney was very cross with Splatter. "Well, Splatter," he said crossly, I want to know what's happened to my passengers." "Oh, that," said Splatter. "I'm so sorry, Stepney. The Fat Controller wanted your passengers away while you were at the works. I am so sorry. Here, for a special treat, you can take this garbage truck for me," said Splatter, and he puffed and he snorted away, feeling very pleased with himself. Stepney was very sad. "Really?" he said. "I hope the Fat Controller didn't mean to take my passengers away on purpose. I must go find him now," and he puffed away to find him. But wherever Stepney went, he couldn't find the Fat Controller anywhere. Until at last he backed miserably onto a siding next to where Sir Handel was taking on passengers at the station. And then Sir Handel was surprised to see Stepney. "Stepney," he said, "you're back, and your paint is shining nicely," he said. "Of course it is," said Stepney miserably. "What's up with you?" asked Sir Handel. Stepney told Sir Handel what was going on with his passengers. "Really?" said Sir Handel. "I don't think the Fat Controller was planning to get rid of your passengers," he said. "And I've heard there was a crash at the big station." "Really?" said Stepney. "I didn't see anything," he said. "The last time I was at the big station, Splatter left his garbage truck. Then he soon found out about the crash Sir Handel was talking about." "Oh dear," he said. "I hope everyone's all right. I've got to go back there and see what's going on," he said, and he puffed away with Sir Handel with a loss for words. And when Stepney arrived at the big station, the crash did appear, but without Stepney. There he saw Hank with some passengers. "Hank," he said, "are you all right?" "Of course I'm all right," said Hank cheerfully. I could have been hurt, but my cowcatcher did exactly the crash I thought it would," he said. "You should have seen what had happened. I just bashed into that garbage truck as it flew high up in the air and crashed and smashed into pieces onto that track next to me," he said. You really should have seen how it reacted, didn't it?" "I guess so," said Stepney. Just then, however, the Fat Controller soon climbed out of Hank. He was even more more curious to find out how the crash happened. "Stepney," he said, "did you cause this crash?" "No, I didn't, sir," he said, and he told him about what Splatter said. "Don't take any notice of Splatter," he said. "Your passengers are all right with me," he said. Then he began. "I gave your passengers to the other engines while you were away because no one was owning the Bluebell branch line right now," he said. "I'm sure that by tomorrow your passengers will come back." "Speaking of coming back, sir," said Hank, "I have Stepney's passengers right now." "Oh, really?" said the Flat Controller. "Let's go see." And he was right. Stepney's passengers came out of Hank's coaches, and they all ran out to see how Stepney was doing. "Stepney," they said, "welcome back. We like your repaint," they all said. "And Hank really is good at pulling coaches, but we prefer you even more." Stepney just laughed and started chatting forever to his passengers. Until the next day later, Stepney was happy to be back on the Bluebell branch line, and he was also happy to have his passengers back, and he was really useful again.